everybody. My name is Susan Bayless-Jewell, and I am the manager of family support here at the Autism Project. Through a grant through the Department of Justice, the Autism Project is working on educating folks on elopement and wandering with individuals with ASD and other developmental disabilities. And today we are going to be talking about setting up an emergency safety plan and what that might look like at home. Preparing for emergency. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to plan, prepare, and then practice. I'm going to start off with a definition of autism. Autism is a spectrum disorder that refers to a neurodevelopmental disorder that is characterized by difficulties with social communication, interaction, restrictive and repetitive patterns of behavior, interest, and activities. By definition, the symptoms are present early on in development and affect daily functioning. So an individual with autism, what types of skills might be affected in an emergency situation? One of the challenges our guys might have is with executive functioning and planning and organizing. Expressing needs, thoughts, or concerns. Because communication is one of the areas of challenges for our guys, being able to express their concerns might be difficult for them. Managing emotional responses. Anyone who has a child with autism, I have two daughters who have autism, we know sometimes that social emotional regulation is really tough for our guys. And then also integrating information, right? We take information in through the environment and our body processes it in a pretty typical way. But for folks who have sensory processing challenges, they may be seeking or avoiding sensory input. Flexible thinking and being able to change a plan up super quickly, like you might have to in an emergency situation. Also controlling our impulses. There's also possible other coexisting conditions that go along with autism. They aren't part of the autism diagnosis, but a lot of times you might see someone who has autism also has anxiety, ADD or ADHD. They might have tic disorder or seizures, sleep disorders. So what are some of the strategies that we can use to help support our guys? One of them is visual supports. Individuals with ASD are visual learners, and a lot of us are visual learners. If I have something in front of me, I'm more likely to remember it. I'm more likely to be able to process it. When you say something, once your words are out there, it's difficult sometimes to retrieve those words and reprocess. But if you have something static, something concrete like a visual that stays there, it can continually be processed through your eyes. Social narratives. Social narrative is simply a story that you would write ahead of time that would describe a situation. You would describe a situation, what was going to happen, and what your child can do in that situation. And also video modeling. Video modeling is so great now that we all have cell phones. You can take a video of what's going to be happening, right? And then have the child replay it over and over again so they understand what the situation is going to be. Some factors that might inhibit our guys' ability to comprehend is distraction. Especially in an emergency situation, there are a lot of distractions. Those sensory challenges, processing all that information that's coming in through the environment. Stress or anxiety, not uncommon for individuals with autism to have high levels of anxiety. And then also biological factors. So let's talk a little bit about wandering and elopement. Wandering is a tendency for a person to leave the safety of a responsible person's care or a safe area by either running off or just leaving without permission. This can also be referred to as elopement, bolting, fleeing, running. So when a person with autism wanders off, it's usually a form of communication. When a person with autism wanders off or bolts or runs off, they typically are needing something, wanting something, or trying to escape or avoid something. So that's what they're communicating to us when one of our guys takes off, right? They either need something, they see something over there, oh yeah, that's something I need or I want, or they're trying to get out of a situation and escape. Individuals with ASD will wander a bolt to get something of interest, right? They were over at the zoo and they saw a balloon over at the gift shop and they're going to take off before we even know what happens, right? Or a situation is too loud or too noisy or too crowded and they're going to want to get away from it. So holidays and vacation or any time that there are transition periods or outdoor events or recent moves, anything like that, our new environments are going to be challenging for kids who risk or wander off. "49% of children with autism engage in wandering behaviors." I mean, that's a lot. That's almost half of children with ASD engage in wandering or elopement. Children with ASD are 8 times more likely to elope between the ages of 7 and 10. More than a third of children with autism who wander are rarely able to communicate their name, address, and phone number. In 2009, 2010, and 2011, accidental drowning accounted for 91% of the total US deaths reported in children with ASD ages 14 and younger. Drowning is the #1 cause of death for children with autism. Almost 60% of parents with children who elope or wander, it becomes a very stressful behavior, a very stressful situation for them, and they've had no training. Half of the families with elopers don't have any guidance or understanding from a professional on what to do. So hopefully today, we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do as parents. So some of the proactive approaches that we can take, common sense type things, like make sure your locks are secure, right? There are security systems, and it doesn't have to be a big, expensive security system that's hardwired. You can buy inexpensive battery-operated alarms to put on the door. You know, I have a colleague that when her son, who has autism, when they would go to a hotel and they were younger, she would bring door chimes and she'd hang them over the door. So if he ever opened that door at night, those chimes would just go off, right? So it doesn't have to be a lot of money, but there are things that we can do to put in place. Printing stop signs, that visual reminder, put them on the doors, put them on the windows. And also work with your child, educate your child about the dangers of wandering, right? And about the importance of staying at home. Talk to them about traffic situations and how dangerous that is, how dangerous it is to go by the water without an adult and strangers. And use language that they're going to likely respond to. Sometimes if you can bring a character or a topic that they're interested in, it gets you a little bit more buy-in. There are also tracking devices that folks can use now. And there are a bunch of them we're going to talk about in a little bit. You can also talk to your neighbors or first responders ahead of time. I have always, whenever I moved into a new area, would write or meet with the police and the fire to let them know that I had 2 daughters who had autism and that they might not respond when their name was called. So if they have an emergent situation, they're going to know that there are 2 young ladies in here who have autism. There's another strategy that we use sometimes called tag you're on, right? So if you're at a social gathering, right, you specifically say, okay, I'm watching Johnny. And then when you're done watching, you go up to another person, tag you're on, you're watching Johnny. Because oftentimes what happens is all of a sudden Johnny's missing. It's like, I thought you were watching him. Well, I thought you were watching him, right? So being very concrete, very specific, who's in charge of watching that child. Also address wandering concerns with school. Let them know if your child wanders or elopes. Summer camp and other community settings as well. You can also create a family emergency plan, right? So in your cell phone, you're going to have a list of, in case of emergency, who to contact. Once you create your emergency plan, you can give those to your family and to your neighbors and to trusted friends. Identify the main areas your child will likely go to within a neighborhood. So if there is a particular house, or if someone in your neighborhood has a pool and your child is drawn to that, make sure you capture that information and put that on your family emergency plan. Assign search angels ahead of time, right? So if you have neighbors and you have friends, talk to them about your emergency plan and say, you know, if this were to ever happen, can I call on you to come and help look? Have a completed elopement alert form in an accessible location with a description and medical information along with calming strategies. And then store emergency contact numbers in your cell phone. But I also would suggest that you store them, you know, on a piece of paper in your wallet, because sometimes we forget our cell phone and it's all of a sudden we don't know anybody's phone number anymore. Aware.org has got a fantastic website, and it has a whole bunch of information on keeping our kids safe. One of the things that they offer, there's a bunch of free downloads. They offer a family wandering emergency plan. So you can just download this form, fill it out, put it on your refrigerator, make sure the babysitter knows where it is, make sure your family knows where it is, and they'll take that moment to stop and pause and say, okay, if this were to happen, what is our plan? What are we going to do? As I mentioned earlier, we now have tracking technology, right? But there are some things we should be thinking about if we're going to go the route of tracking technology. How long is that battery life, right? Is it water resistant? If this gets wet, is it no longer going to be effective? Can your child remove it? And that's a big one. Can they remove it? Is geofencing available? Or is it cellular reception that's going to track it? Does the system involve trained emergency personnel? So some of the more expensive systems to get involved in, they actually have different police departments that are trained in their particular tracking device. And is this a one-time purchase, or is this something that you're going to have to pay a monthly subscription fee for? Again, there's some very affordable safety tools that we can use. Sometimes low tech is the best. Sometimes stop signs, you know, just that visual reminder, stop, don't go out. There are also shoe ID tags, right, where you can put them right into their shoelace and has information about your child. There are door and window chimes, alarms that you can put on, little battery operated ones. There's a thing called a door guardian, and it's a portable exterior door lock. And then there are also temporary tattoos, which I think is a great idea, especially for folks who are going to, you know, big events. You know, families like to go to Disney or amusement parks or something, but to have a temporary tattoo that has your cell phone number on it in the unlikely event that your child becomes separated from you. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about fire safety. A lot of this is common sense, but I think for me, if I get reminded of it, it's very helpful. Check your smoke alarms. Working smoke alarms reduce the chance of dying in a fire by 50%. Create and practice a home fire escape plan. Choose an outside meeting place that's a safe distance away from the home. And then again, we can create social narratives to help educate our kids on fire safety. So this is an example of a social narrative, my fire safety plan, and you would just tailor it to your child's level or what would make sense to your child. We have fire alarms in our home to keep us safe. When the fire alarm beeps, I will leave the house and wait at the mailbox. The mailbox is my family's emergency meeting area. Even if I do not smell or see smoke when the alarm beeps, I will go to the mailbox. I will wait at the mailbox until my parents or a firefighter come and get me. This will help keep me and my family safe if there is a fire. Right, so it's explaining a situation that could happen. It's telling our child what they can do in that situation. And here is the meeting area, right? We're going to have a little diagram. This is our meeting area, and it's a fire drill. So you're going to practice it. Just like our children practice fire drills at school, you would practice this at home. National Fire Protection has a great book. It's called I Know My Fire Safety Plan. And it's a free interactive storybook which breaks down different points into easy to follow steps for children. And it's a social story format as well. Another area of safety for our kids is car safety, being secure and safe in the car. We've always used a visual narrative, right? So once again, our guys being visual learners, being able to have something for them to look at. This picture helps me to remember what it looks like when I'm sitting in the car. My bottom's in the seat, my seatbelt is on, and my feet are hanging down. This is how I sit safely in a car. And you could take a picture of your own child. I often get calls from parents who have children who tend to unbuckle. They unbuckle their seat and now they're loose in the car while they're driving. So there are a bunch of very low-tech seatbelt locks. The first one, you just put it over your regular buckle, and then you just take your key and you press down on one of those slots and it releases it. For some parents, they like the idea of window clings in their car, right? So a child with special needs is on board. In an emergency situation, caution, occupants may not respond, be unaware of danger, or resist help. In the event that you were in a car accident, you are not able to speak on behalf of your children. You wouldn't want a first responder not to have that information. Another one says, precaution, this occupant has a nonverbal epilepsy, cerebral palsy, whatever it is, right? It's a window sticker. They also have these for homes, but we don't include them here because, I think it's a challenging. I don't know if I would ever want someone from the outside to know where my child's bedroom is and that they might be nonverbal, but for a car, it might be a little different situation. They also have ribbons that you can put on a seatbelt cover. Right? So if a first responder is coming in, right, on the one side, it says that they have autism. There's a pocket on the inside that gives medical information. This is one that I prefer because you're not announcing to the outside world that there's a child with special needs in here, but when they're in their seat with their buckle on, they can see all that information, and it gives you a place to put their medical information as well. Now, as our kids get older and they get their driver's license, right? Sometimes when our guys are super stressed out, they can't access communication, they can't access language appropriately. So these are cards that are made for an individual who has autism that they could give to a police officer, right? To let them know, that I've been diagnosed with autism. And we're just going to wind up with a few resources. There's a Rhode Island Special Needs Registry where you fill out paperwork and you enroll in it, and it lets the first responders better prepare for your child during a storm or an emergency. It's kind of cool because I know like we have ours, and what they do is every time there's like a bad storm or something like that, they will call, they will see if you need assistance, or if it were a hurricane, do you need help evacuating? And they're able, and it's not just for ASD or children with special needs, it's also for folks who are elderly that might need additional assistance. But you have an opportunity to put down all the information. Are they visually impaired? Do they have medical conditions? What is their communication style? Do they have prosthetics? Do they have a service animal, right? And you can add all that information onto the Special Needs Registry. Now, the National Autism Association has got a kit called the Big Red Safety Box. And this is free of charge, and it's a toolkit for families and professionals. And it provides information and education on how to raise awareness and tools that are going to assist us in preventing and responding to wandering-related emergencies. Right? Inside this big red box that you can get for free, you can just go to the NAA website, is the red booklet, and that's going to give you a whole bunch of tips that we've already talked about for wandering and elopement. You will get 2 wireless door or window alarms, a medic alert bracelet or pendant. You're going to get a shoe ID tag, 5 adhesive stop signs. Again, that low tech visual is always helpful. 2 safety alert window clings, safety alert wristband, and a child ID kit. Autism Law Enforcement Education Coalition, or ALEC, provides training to police officers, emergency personnel, and firefighters using a curriculum and videos specific to each group. Right? Our first responders are come meeting our children all the time, and it's so wonderful if they can have additional information on how our children communicate. This helps foster a deeper understanding of autism among public safety and law enforcement personnel. They host trainings for first responders, and they have an open house for fire and police departments. Providers training for parents on how to educate their children about emergency and crisis situations. And as always, if anybody needs any kind of assistance with family support or educational resources, feel free to reach out to me, Susan Bayless Jewell. Our team is here to help you at the Autism Project.